Good morning, church. I am Pastor Doug Williams, and it's great to be with you today. Technology has allowed us to do the sharing, even though I can't physically be in your space, because normally when I step up to speak, I like to say, hey, good to see you, church. But today I can't, obviously. But it's so good to be able to share with you regardless. I'd like to talk about a family on lockdown. Look at the things that we've been going through recently. But in Genesis chapter 19, there's the story of Lot and his two daughters trapped in a cave in a mountain. And it says afterwards Lot left Zoar because he was afraid of the people there. He went to live in a cave in the mountains with his two daughters. One day the older daughter said to her sister, "There isn't a man anywhere in this entire area for us to marry, and our father will soon be too old to have children. Come, let's get him drunk with wine, then we'll sleep with him. That way we will preserve our family line through our father." So that night they got him drunk, and the older daughter went in and slept with her father. He was unaware of her lying down or getting up again. The next morning, the older daughter said to her younger sister, "I slept with our father last night. Let's get him drunk with wine again, and you go in and sleep with him. That way our family line will be preserved." So that night they got him drunk again, and the younger daughter went in and slept with him. As before, he was unaware of her lying down or getting up again. So both of Lot's daughters became pregnant by their father. When the older daughter gave birth to a son, she named him Moab. He became the ancestor of the nation now known as the Moabites. When the younger daughter gave birth to a son, she named him Ben-Ami. He became the ancestor of the nation known as the Ammonites. Father, help us to understand your word this morning and the implications of making poor decisions when we're in a scenario of lockdown. We can cause great damage to our future and for many generations to come if we act unwisely in a moment of crisis. So give us your wisdom, I pray, in Jesus' name. I'm looking at the story of Lot, I guess because of the joke that I'd had with my family. Because during this lockdown period, I've been trying to eat more healthily, recover from being hit by the coronavirus myself. It's been a 10, 12-week battle for me to get over the symptoms of that. And thank God I'm through it, but it was a challenging moment. So my family thought, well, since you're not eating very much and you need to kind of check your diet. I was desperate to eat some cake during one period. I don't know why. When my taste came back, I said, "Can I get some cake?" They said, "No. No, you're going to have healthy food, Dad. You can't get anyone to get you any cake. Don't ask anybody to send you anything." People at the church being so kind and sending me little bits and pieces to encourage me during my crisis time. They said, "No, don't do it, Dad. You're going backwards. Don't go back. Remember Lot's wife. She turned back and look what happened to her." I said, "Yeah, she turned back because she probably thought with a little fire and brimstone, somebody could at least bake something around here." So we had a good laugh about that. But it made me think of Lot's story. And the story in Lot was interesting because the focus for me as I've reflected on the story was him in a little place called Zoar. And he didn't want to be there. It says that he feared the people. He didn't want to live in that restricted place. He'd been allowed to go to that restricted place because God was going to bring a judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah for their unkindness to the poor, marginalized people, and for the perverse sexual activity that was taking place in the region. And so Lot was given an opportunity through angelic intervention to get out of there and to move on. His wife did turn back and actually lost her life. But him and his daughters, he lost some son-in-laws in the process and family members, but they tried to get away from there, and they were allowed to run quickly to a place called Zoar. It means small. They were on lockdown. They were in a restricted place in Zoar. They ran from Zoar eventually, and they ran into the mountains. So this family were in a restricted place. Their movement was limited. They just had to pass through the crisis moment in a very small, restricted lockdown situation. They didn't do so well. And I'm watching people who in the lockdown situation have been affected. Their mental health, they're not imbecile. They're not without clear thinking, but they're just the pressure on mental health during the time of lockdown means that some people have made bad life choices and decisions during the crisis moments that they've been living through. And I want to encourage you, while you're on lockdown and while there is restriction and crisis around you, continue to do the right thing. Continue to live with the right values and live appropriately before God. This man didn't. And I want to say three things about Lot as I just go through this message today. The first thing you want to notice is about Lot's reticence. He was kind of reluctant. He was going through this process with a sense of, I'm not happy with this. I don't really want to be here. This is so frustrating. But the reticence could have made you create major mistakes. I mean, verse 16 tells us he lingered. The angels were saying, come on, we've got to hurry up. We've got to do our job. He was dragging his heels in the middle of that crisis. The other thing too was, I guess he thought there was so much to be invested here. In verse 2 of chapter 19, the scriptures clearly tell us that he says to the angel visitors to the town, why don't you come to my house? I've got property here. I've got things that I own, things that I've invested in. Please come, be a part of all of that. So he lingered. He was reluctant to leave it. He had a stake in the area. And he also was well known. It says in verse 1 that he sat in the gate. He sat at the entrance of the city. This is the technical term of sitting at the gate is more than saying that was my geographic location. When people sit at the gate was the place where the authority figures and voices of the community often sat for consultation. So Lot had become a significant voice in the community and an influential figure. So I've got property investment, material concerns. I've got a reputation and a place of influence and profile. No wonder he was reluctant to leave that place. It seemed that the crisis was going to undermine a lot of things that he thought were at stake for him, and he didn't want to lose them. So he made a request to the angels, and this is the first thing is his reticence. The second thing is his request. Can I go to Zoar? And he begins to go to Zoar, and the angel said, look, okay, I'll let you go there, because I've got to get on with this job of bringing the judgment of God to this region. And I can't do it until you're in a protected place. You've been prayed for and thought through. You need to get on and go. So they allow him to go to Zoar, the place called small, the place called restricted. And Lot's there for a while. And then he begins to become fearful. It says he began to develop fears about this place and some regrets about what he had lost. He then decides, I'm going to run to the mountains. Now, he had an opportunity to choose where he lived in that region a long time ago. He never chose the mountains then. He chose somewhere else. Maybe he didn't think then the mountains were any good. It's amazing how our minds can change under crisis. Things that we wouldn't have done, things we wouldn't have embraced. The crisis makes us embrace them. Run towards them. Be careful with that. Him and his two daughters ran to that place. Now, in the middle of that place, with his regrets and his disappointments over the things that weren't working out well for him, his loss of property and position and profile and power, etc., Lot begins to drink. He maybe feels I can self-medicate and bury my feelings of pressure and difficulty under the alcohol. It's amazing under lockdown when people are pressured and try and find some level of relief that they will engage in behavior and activity that they know that they shouldn't. But they excuse themselves because I'm pressured. I'll just do it because I need relief. I need a break. I deserve a break. Who cares? It's a problem issue. Everybody's got to find a way to handle it. But you've got to find a way to handle it well. In a way that speaks of faith and hope and life beyond the crisis. Because for a number of you, there's another generation that are watching how we handle the crisis in our church, in our families, in our businesses. Some of you have got children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews who are looking to you to see how you will handle this season right now. And the reason why I'm saying that is because in the story of Lot, his two daughters, while he was under the influence of alcohol and trying to sleep it off, his two daughters began to speak. And they said, look, let's think about this. We didn't bring our husbands here with us. Our dad's getting to be old. And after the angelic destruction of this region, who knows who'll be left? We'll be without children. We'll be without husbands. We'll be without future. And because they couldn't see future, and they felt robbed historically of all the things that they'd had, that it was never going to be the same, they began to make some unwise decisions. Reckless decisions, ladies and gentlemen, cast long shadows. As a result of their mishandling and misjudging that moment, they engaged in an act of incest. Whatever level of discussion you want to have about that, that's a problem. But they gave birth to two individuals, and those individuals developed into nations, the Ammonites and the Moabites. Do you know the sinful behavior of those two people groups lasted for several hundred years and became a point of focus for God himself to say, I'm going to have to deal with those individuals. I'm not sure whether in the moment of crisis, the decision that those young ladies made about their disappointment over history and their fear for the future because of the crisis moment and their season of lockdown and restriction, whether they felt, we can't see future. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. Let's just make some decisions based in the here and now. I'm telling you, when you make whatever decisions you're making for your life in the lockdown crisis, make wise ones. Because every decision will have an outcome. Every decision has implications for your future. If you want a good future, choose wisely when you're living in Zoar, when you're living in restrictions, when things around you are not what you thought they would be, when all you consider as normal is up in the air and open to change. This is what our current coronavirus and lockdown scenarios are doing all over the globe. This crisis has developed a global footprint. And I'm sure there were lots of people, lots of families having to rethink what their normal has been and come to terms with the new normal. And have to think about what kind of decisions are we going to make. Think well, think long, think hard, think deeply and meditatively and wisely about how you're going to do your life in lockdown, because it has implications for how you do your life for a long time yet to come. I believe that God will give us wisdom for the days ahead and wisdom for the current crisis. He'll keep us in his peace, he'll keep us in his grace. But while there's restriction, while there's limitation, while there's the frustration of the moment, let's use this moment not to try and self-medicate and drink away our problems or misbehave because we think it doesn't matter anymore. But let's use these moments to be wise, to be sharp, to reflect, to get ready for the new normal, and to prepare ourselves for the days to come. I think if we do that, God's going to bless us. We're going to come out of the crisis and find ourselves in a better position for whatever scenario will face us beyond this moment. So I'm praying for you today that God grant your church incredible wisdom. God grant you phenomenal capacity to handle the crisis of the moment with maturity, spirituality, and a sense of clear intent. So that beyond all of this, you're ready for whatever he has for you in terms of ministry and purpose beyond now. I can't promise you life is going to be problem-free. In fact, Jesus said, in this world, you're going to have tribulations and pressures. Welcome to the real world. Coronavirus, COVID-19, international conflicts and difficulty. Welcome to the real world. I can't control all of that. What I can control is my reaction to it and my decisions in the midst of it. I pray that you think carefully, long and hard about where you want to be beyond all of this and how to live your life on the back of it. And I think God will give you his wisdom and grace to do it. As a matter of fact, it's the book of James that tells us if we need wisdom for anything, at any time, we can ask God, who has committed himself to giving us the wisdom in liberal measure. He'll give it to you in whatever capacity or amounts you need. If you're hungry for wisdom, God says, just keep asking. I'll never rebuke you. You can never out-ask me. I will always give you what you require for the season. And the promise of 1 Corinthians 10 verse 13 is very clear. God says, I, because of my faithfulness, will never allow you to be tested, tempted, or tried beyond what you are able to endure. Which means every temptation, test, or trial that comes into your experience that God allows, he only allows it because he knows you have the capacity to handle it with his grace. Now, sometimes I know some pressure points have happened to me and I've gone, I don't think I've got, I don't have enough in the tank in me to handle this problem. God says, yeah, you do. The fact that I've let it come across your pathway is proof that you do. Because I will never let you face a temptation, test, or trial that you don't have the capacity to deal with. I promise you that. God is faithful. He will not allow you to be tested, tempted, or tried beyond what you are able. Which means when I get to a point of saying, I don't think I can handle this, God says, you can. I know more about you than you know about yourself. So when God allows a crisis to come your way, look at the crisis and say, actually, you could be my friend because you've been allowed into my life by the hand of God in order to define for me where I have ability. Because if he's let you come across my path, it's because he says you have the ability to handle it. And he knows I have the capacity to handle it. He won't let me be tempted beyond my ability. So temptation, test, and trial defines where you have ability. Remember that insight. It will save you a lot of pain and maybe give you the courage to look at whatever crisis you're walking through, saying, this is tough, but if this has been allowed by God, then he knows with his help and everything inside me, I can make this happen. I can walk through this. I can win through this. So here's to winning in Jesus' name.